The sky outside was still deep indigo, the streetlights still glowing yellow through the kitchen window, when Maya pulled out her chipped ceramic mug and beat-up spiral notebook. This was the only quiet slice of the day that belonged to nobody else. She worked 40 hours a week at a marketing firm. She answered more than 50 emails after dinner every night. She walked through her days with the tired, permanent slump of someone always 2 steps behind her own to-do list. Every free minute felt spoken for. Every weekend was crammed full of chores and catch-up that never really caught up. But under all the tiredness, there was a pulse of something stubborn, a curiosity that wouldn't go away. She wanted to learn, not someday, when she had more time, not in 2-hour stolen blocks on weekends that she'd end up skipping anyway. She wanted to learn in 5-minute slices, small enough to actually keep, no matter how busy the day got, no matter how tired she was when she rolled out of bed. She traced the edge of her notebook with her thumb and made the promise to herself. She'd show up 5 minutes every single morning before anything else, before anyone else needed anything from her. She taped a scrap of cardboard to the fridge door and turned it into her street calendar, 1 square for every day of the week. She'd mark an X every time she finished her 5 minutes, no exceptions. The first week came and went fast, and it was clumsy from start to finish. The X's were lopsided, smudged where her hands slipped when she was in a hurry. There were blank gaps, lonely and bright white, where she'd missed the mark entirely. Some mornings, she'd cram a quick language lesson while stirring oatmeal on the stove. She'd watch the video, repeat the phrase under her breath, and forget to stir. The oatmeal boiled over, bubbled over the edge, and spread sticky goop across the burner. She'd have to drop everything to scrub it out, run late for work, and forget to mark her X anyway. Other mornings, she rolled out of bed 10 minutes late. She grabbed her bag and her keys, ran straight out the door, and didn't think of her notebook until she was already sitting at her desk. By the time she got home, cooked dinner, answered all her work emails, it was midnight. She'd climb into bed, and the memory of the missed day would hit her. She'd press her heels into the mattress, angry at herself for breaking the streak before it even got started. 1 gap turned into 2. The cardboard calendar looked more mess than order by the end of the first 7 days. The small wins felt laughable at first, too tiny to count as any real progress. She'd learn 1 new keyboard shortcut that cut 10 seconds off a repetitive daily task. She'd tweak the order of her morning prep, swap 2 steps around, and cut a full 10 minutes off the time it took to get out the door. She'd memorized 3 new vocabulary words for the language she wanted to learn. Nothing that would impress anyone else. Nothing that would change her life in a single day. She'd stand in front of the fridge calendar, holding the yellow highlighter she'd bought specifically for this, and pause some days. She'd think, this isn't big enough to count. That shortcut doesn't matter. No one but me will ever see this. Then she'd put the bright yellow dot right in the square anyway. No fanfare, no celebration, no posting about it to anyone. She'd cap the highlighter, close the fridge door, close the browser tab with her lesson, grab her work bag, and head out the door. It didn't matter if the win was laughably small. It didn't matter if she'd spent the whole 5 minutes just rereading what she'd learnt the day before. What mattered was that she'd showed up. What mattered was that she'd kept the promise she'd made to herself, even when it felt stupid, even when it felt useless. The quiet knowledge settled into her chest, soft but solid. She could count on herself. That was enough. Even on the days when nothing else felt like it was going right. 30 days passed, almost before Maya noticed. She still woke up early, still sat at her tiny kitchen table with her chipped mug and her notebook. The 5-minute slices still felt tiny enough to overlook. Slow as water carving through stone. Then the shift hit her, midway through the 4th week, when she sat down to write a client email that would normally have taken her 20 minutes of tinkering. A tiny grammar trick she'd learned in one 5-minute language lesson popped into her head. She adjusted 2 sentences, tightened the whole message, and sent it off in 5 minutes flat. No overthinking, no second guessing. A few days later, she had a big client call scheduled first thing. The kind that normally had her pacing the hallway for 10 minutes before it started. Heart hammering. She remembered the 5-minute breathing exercise she'd practiced every morning for 2 weeks. She leaned back in her chair, did 3 slow rounds, and stepped onto the call 3 minutes calmer than she'd ever been. The tiny changes stacked up, one on top of the other. Her 1-week streaks became 2, then 4. The messy, lopsided X's and blank gaps turned into solid lines of bright yellow dots that stretched all the way across the cardboard. The practice stopped feeling like an effort to fit in. It became a small, sacred ritual. It was the first deliberate thing she did every day, and it belonged only to her. Not to her boss, not to her clients, not to anyone else who needed a piece of her time. It was hers, for growth, for showing up, for the quiet promise she'd kept to herself for 30 straight days. 6 months rolled past, one yellow dot after another. Maya still got up before the sun, still fit her 5-minute lessons into the quiet space before the rest of the world woke up. She still answered 50-plus emails after dinner, still worked 40 hours a week at the marketing firm. No one but her knew about the dots on the cardboard taped to her fridge. No one had talked to her about the daily practice she'd built, one slice at a time. It was still just hers. Then, over dinner at a monthly friend gathering, one of her friends leaned forward and asked her what had changed. "You're sharper than you used to be," she said. "You catch on to new topics faster. You don't get all tight and stressed when the conversation shifts suddenly." Another friend nodded. "You said yes to that hike last minute, the one you would have turned down 6 months ago because you'd say you were too busy, too overwhelmed to plan. You're slower to panic when things go wrong, quicker to say yes to anything that sounds interesting." Maya blinked. She hadn't noticed. She'd just kept showing up for 5 minutes a day. She'd just kept adding dots to the calendar. But the change had seeped out of her private ritual and into every part of her life. It had shifted how she showed up for conversations, how she responded to chaos, how she thought about what she could do. She went home that night and thought about the idea that had been nudging at her for months. For the first time, she didn't tell herself she was too busy, or too inexperienced, or that it didn't matter. She pulled out her beat-up spiral notebook, grabbed her pen, and started writing. She set out to build something simple. No fluff, no fancy formatting. 10 pages total, straight to the point. She called it a guide to 5-minute learning for people who can't carve out 2 hours a week. It laid out exactly what she'd done, how she fit the slices into her morning, how she stopped beating herself up for missed days, how the tiny wins stacked up even when they felt useless. She didn't have a website, didn't have a social media following. She posted it as a free download to a small online forum for people who hate overcomplicated productivity hacks. She hit post, closed the tab, and went to work. She didn't think anything would come of it. The next morning, she checked the forum statistics. 12 downloads, 1 like. That was it. She shrugged, marked it done, and went to her kitchen table for her 5-minute lesson. 18 hours later, she got a notification. Someone had shared her post to Twitter. It was one of the biggest productivity bloggers in the space. Someone with 300,000 followers. He wrote, "I tried this system last month. It works. Stop scrolling and go download this." By the end of the hour, the download count hit 1,000. By the end of the day, it was 10,000. People started tagging her on social media, talking about how they'd started their own 5-minute streaks that morning. People praised the clear, no-nonsense advice. People said it was the first productivity plan they'd actually stuck to for more than a week. Maya woke the next morning, still half convinced the previous day's surge of attention had been a dream. She poured her coffee into the chipped ceramic mug, sat at her tiny kitchen table, and did her 5-minute lesson on active listening. Like every other day, she opened her work inbox to sort through the overnight messages, same as she did every weekday morning. Most were client requests, same as always. Most went straight to the appropriate folders, sorted by priority. One landed in the promotions tab, with a subject line that read, "Question about your 5-minute learning guide." Maya's finger hovered over the delete key. It was probably a spam pitch, or someone asking her to promote a product she'd never heard of. She almost clicked. Then she squinted at the sender name. It was a name she recognized. An editor at a small digital press that published short, practical guides for people building new habits. She opened the email. The note was short and straightforward. "We've seen your free guide," it said. "It resonates with exactly the kind of content our readers look for. Would you be interested in expanding it into a short book? We can offer a small advance and full creative control over the structure." Maya leaned back in her chair. The coffee steam curled up from her mug, fogging the edge of her laptop screen. This wasn't overnight fame. It wasn't $1 million check. It was just the first concrete, tangible payoff for all the tiny steps she'd taken, one 5-minute morning at a time. All the steps no one but her had ever seen. All the dots she'd drawn, one by one, on a scrap of cardboard taped to the fridge. 12 months passed from that first X drawn on the scrap of cardboard. Maya finished expanding her guide into the short book, sent it off to the editor, and kept her morning 5-minute ritual unchanged. She didn't quit her marketing job. She didn't chase a sudden career pivot she wasn't ready for. She just kept moving, one day at a time, the yellow dots stretching solid across every new calendar she taped to the fridge. Then she decided to try something new. She'd answered dozens of questions from readers who wanted step-by-step help building their own 5-minute learning streaks. She thought about putting the answers into a structured session. She debated making it free, like the original guide, to keep it accessible. Then she landed on a middle ground, a single 90-minute micro course hosted on a creator platform that handled all the technical work. She charged a flat $15 fee per person, split the revenue evenly with the platform, and promised herself every dollar of her share would go to one thing only: sabbatical weekends. The course filled up faster than she expected. People showed up ready to take notes, ready to ask questions, ready to start their own streaks that same week. Maya collected her first payout a week after the course ended. She counted the total, added a little extra from her own side savings, and booked a small cabin 2 hours outside the city. One weekend a month, she'd take off work, leave her work emails on auto-reply, and sit on the cabin porch with her notebook. She tried bigger learning experiments she'd never had time for during the work week. Things that took hours, not 5 minutes. Things she'd only daydreamed about trying, back when she was always 2 steps behind her own to-do list. The streak that started with a scrap of cardboard had turned into space to grow on her own terms. This is the point most stories skip. We don't hear about the tiny, daily steps that no one sees. We only hear about the final payoff, the book deal, the sold-out course, the big break that looks like it came out of nowhere. But Maya's story isn't about a lucky break. It's about the break that built itself, one 5-minute block at a time. The point isn't that Maya became an expert in every skill she touched. It isn't that she quit her job and became a full-time author and course creator overnight. It's that she learned to trust the compound power of small, deliberate actions. A single 5-minute lesson rarely changes your life. It doesn't shift your skills enough to notice, doesn't shift your confidence enough to feel, doesn't open any new doors by itself. But a 5-minute lesson every day for a year does. It shifts your habits, slow as water carving through stone. It shifts your confidence, because every small completed step adds up to proof you can keep a promise to yourself. It shifts what you believe you're capable of achieving. You stop seeing big goals as impossible mountains you can never climb. You start seeing them as a collection of small steps you can take, one day at a time. If you take one thing from this story, let it be this. Pick one small action that moves you toward what you want. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be impressive. It just has to be yours. Do it today and mark it done. Then do it again tomorrow. The first weeks will feel useless. The wins will feel too small to matter. No one will notice what you're doing. You'll want to quit because nothing seems to be changing. Keep going. Keep showing up 5 minutes at a time. In a year, you'll be surprised who you've become.